One-way, round trip, open jaw, double open jaw, or multi-city trip. The first two groups are widely known. A one-way trip entails travel in one direction, point A to point B. For instance, if I bought a plane ticket to travel from Los Angeles to Paris without a return, that ticket is for a one-way trip, Los Angeles, Paris. Regardless of whether this is going to be a non-stop, direct, or connecting flight, it is still a one-way trip. A round trip involves travel in two directions, point A to point B, then back to A from B. Using the previous example, if I fly from Los Angeles to Paris and then return from Paris to LA, I am making a round trip. Again, the flight type doesn't matter. An open-jaw trip has two variations. The first one is flying from point A to point B and returning from B to point C. A good example is the combination of a flight from Chicago to Stockholm with a return from Stockholm to New York. This is an open-jaw trip. The second variation goes as follows: point A to point B with a return from point C back to A. Imagine I booked a flight from San Francisco to Barcelona. I took a cruise on the Mediterranean Sea and I am returning to San Francisco from Athens. This is also an open-jaw trip. A double open-jaw trip can be described as travel from point A to point B with a return from point C to point D. Here's an example. Let's start again with a flight from Los Angeles to Paris, only this time we will pair it with a return from London to Seattle. Now that is a double open jaw for you. A multi-city trip is exactly what it sounds like it would be, an itinerary with several different cities in which the traveler may spend from a day to several weeks. To illustrate this trip, imagine an itinerary from New York to Reykjavik, then to Madrid, then to Dubai, then to Singapore, then to Sydney. Well, you get the idea. If the first and the last points in a multi-city trip are close or coincide, the itinerary may be referred to as an around-the-world trip. This was a quick tour of all the trip types. Now you know what a one-way, round trip, open jaw, double open jaw, and multi-city trips are.